begin our conference this morning, we welcome Curtis Rook, who is here this morning to discuss manure management on PEI. Curtis grew up on a small farm in Ontario. He attended the University of Guelph, where he obtained a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering. Curtis is a soil and water conservation engineer from the PEI Department of Agriculture, implementing conservation measures in fields throughout the province. In addition to this, he is a manure management advisor working alongside producers and provincial planning officials on best livestock manure management practices or projects in the province.
Good morning, everyone. I usually don't tell anyone I'm a manure advisor for the province because it's not necessarily a braggable position, but nonetheless, here I am. So thank you for coming. It's a bit of a smaller crowd, but that's okay. So today I'm here to talk to you guys about the PEI updated manure management guidelines. So the last time the guidelines were updated was in 1999, and not that I want to date myself, but they were just a couple months older than me. And a lot of the, to ensure the guidelines remain relevant with current industry practices, we decided to update them and overhaul them. So we do expect in the coming weeks the guidelines to be released to the general public, but I put this presentation together here today to give you guys kind of like a rough idea what the guidelines are, what the purpose of them are, and then the major changes that we incorporated into new guidelines. So I guess I'll just get into it. So the purpose of the guidelines is to provide directions to the agriculture industry and the public on recommended manure management practices here on the island. It's also used to guide the establishment of new and expanding livestock facilities when issuing development permits. It's used to cite recommended manure management practices and setback distances used in the environmental impact assessment that the Department of Agriculture does. It's also used as a technical resource for the development of the Agriculture Stewardship Program. I will be talking a little bit more on the Agriculture Stewardship Program at the end, but throughout the presentation I was able to add some snippets of what the current guidelines look like and what the new guidelines will look like to give you guys a rough idea of what to expect. If we move down, I've included kind of what the process was of updating the guidelines. So in March of 2022, we hired an outside consultant which had extensive expertise in engineering and agricultural experience to overhaul the guidelines and also to include a climate lens focus. We felt this was important just because we were also working with the Department of Environment at the time. So in June of 2022, we had our first round consultations with industry stakeholders and government officials to kind of see what we wanted to change about the 1999 guidelines, what we should incorporate, what we should take out, what we should add. And then in August of 2022, we had a public meeting, or a public survey put out, I should say, on the provincial website of, again, on the 1999 guidelines, what we should do, just to get a, kind of like a basis of what changes we wanted to incorporate. And we worked throughout the next 8 months to update the guidelines and renovate them, if you would say. And in May of 2023, we kind of had like a finished product, and we went for second round consultations with industry stakeholders on the updated guidelines. We got their feedback. There wasn't many major changes. We just wanted to make sure anything we were doing wasn't out of line with current practices. And then October of 2023, we finished the guidelines. Now, as I said, we are expecting approval in the coming weeks to release it to the general public. So these are the major changes that we incorporated. So the first one is a climate lens. Now, as I said earlier, we included a climate lens throughout the entire document. So this is a climate focus on reducing greenhouse gas emission and environmental risk. And we did this by updating the storing, siting, constructing of manure storages. We also added a bunch of different treatments of manure, and this is just to recover more nutrients and increase fertilizer value. So whether it's an anaerobic digestion process or composting or aeration, acidification, we kind of gave the pros and cons of each and the description of what they are and how they impact the environment. The next change is a new manure handling section. So this is kind of the impacts associated when you're transporting manure and what systems you should be in place for when you're transporting it, whether you're doing a tanker system or a dragline system. There are environmental risks associated with each of those. Another addition is a new manure application section. So this is whether you're doing a dribble bar or you're doing injection or you're just doing a simple splash plate for liquid manure, the pros and cons of each, and then also the environmental risks associated with them. The next one is manure storage systems. Now I should put a bit of a disclaimer in here. So all current manure storage systems on PEI are grandfathered in unless you're updating or expanding your current storage, so then you would need to conform to the new guidelines. So for liquid, we increased the storage days from 210 days to 270 days. So this basically means if your farm has X number of cows, the new storage that you're building must store 270 days worth of manure for that X number of cows. The next change is also in liquid. We increased the freeboard from 12 inches to 20 inches. So the freeboard, it's not the holy crap, I got a lot more space in my manure storage to fill up. It's meant for excess rainfall, typically 1 in 25-year storms. And as you guys know, due to climate change, those storms are happening more frequently, and we wanted to incorporate these into the new guidelines. The next change is a solid manure storage system has decreased from 60 days of storage to 30 days with adequate field storage. If you don't have adequate field storage, it would be 270 days just to be in line with liquid. And then producers must submit an engineer commitment declaration. This is just a piece of paper letting us know that the engineer is going to see the project throughout and it's going to be done to its standard. And the final change is we added all manure storages must be designed by a professional engineer with the province, with the exception of small solid manure storage systems. And a small solid manure storage system is having a volume of less than 600 cubic meters, a surface area of less than 600 meters squared, and a containment wall of 1 meter or less. Now that we don't really talk in meters with farmers, but to give you a rough idea, 600 meters squared surface area is a little bit under 6,500 square feet, so roughly a 60 by 100 pack barn would be considered a small manure storage. We didn't pull these numbers out of thin air. They're directly from the National Building Code of Canada in Part 2 of the Farm Buildings. And also other jurisdictions are doing that as well. The next one is we updated the minimum separation distance, so MSD. So that's the distance between livestock operations and other non-agricultural land uses. So whether it be a resident area or a commercial or a golf course or even your in-laws, but you can't build it closer. MSD applies to new and expanding manure storage systems and change of use of operations. And the change we made here is we just simply switched from animal units to nutrient units. This helps us with the nutrient management planning, but also a more accurate representation of the odor being produced on your farm. And the next change we made is we modernized the manure production rates, animal groups, and animal weights. So as you can see there, we kind of broke everything down so your farm is able to calculate how much manure it's producing, and it makes it easier for everyone. Beneficial management practices. So these are advantageous management practices added throughout the guidelines. They're like the small little orange square that you'll see throughout the guidelines, and it gives you kind of what the producer can go above and beyond standard and also help the environment at the same time. But we did also add a couple other new sections. So the commissioning and decommissioning of manure storages we added. And this is just to help producers, whether you're entering or exit the industry, what you can look for. We added a new emergency spill action plan. So this is basically whether you're storing, handling, or spreading manure, what you can do to minimize the risk of a spill, and if a spill were to occur, what to do. And as I spoke on this a little bit earlier, we added a new liquid manure holding capacity plan. So this is to give your farm a rough idea how much manure your manure storage will hold. I have done a few of these for the other farmers around the island, and I can certainly help you out if you need. It allows farmers to kind of plan when to spread manure and what's best for their soil. The next change isn't a huge one, but just simply housekeeping as we modernize run-on and run-off controls of solid manure storage systems. As you can see, the guidelines are certainly a lot more appealing than the old guidelines, and hopefully it may entice you to read them a little more, but we will see. The next change is manure application. So we added a new manure testing section. So this is how you, where's my note? So how to test your manure. So whether it be a solid manure you're testing or liquid manure, and then when you test the manure and you give it to the lab, when you get those results back, how to read them. Because that's probably the hardest part for farmers, is how do I read the report I got. So we broke that down into the new guidelines of how to read it, and then so you can kind of plan on your application of how much to apply to your fields. And if you don't test your manure, that's completely okay, but we did include baseline data, and this is directly from what Kyra Stiles presented here last year. I believe it's the manure and nutrient analysis report. This gives producers a rough idea of what their manure is worth, whether it be pig manure or beef manure or dairy manure. It just allows them to kind of have a rough idea of, what the value of their manure is. The next change is nutrient management planning. Now, I spoke on this a little bit earlier. We added a nutrient management planning section. This is just to help producers apply effectively as possible to their soil to get the best yields and hopefully reduce environmental risk. The next one is a new manure incorporation section. This is, we just kind of changed it because we really want to focus on incorporating your manure as soon as possible after you apply it, because we're seeing extensive nitrogen loss when you're waiting. Typically, we changed it from 48 hours to 24 hours of incorporation. Just something to note. The next one isn't necessarily a change, but I do know we have some producers in here that handle manure but not necessarily have livestock, is that manure piles must maintain a distance of 90 meters from any wetland or watercourse or any resident wells or neighboring wells. And then also, to avoid any potential runoff, manure piles should be about 30 meters away from any public road. This is more of a beneficial management practice, just because you want to satisfy your neighbors, but you also want to, apply manure where possible. And then, as you guys know, any upslope surface water should be diverted away from the pile. That's pretty much all for me. I would like to put a bit of a plug in for the Agriculture Stewardship Program. There is funding available for solid manure storages, liquid manure storages, covered feedlots, and exercise yards. And new as of last year, we added a BMP on gerbil bar and injection. So on a per acre basis, you can get paid if you have a gerbil bar or a injection system for liquid manure. That's pretty much all from me. If you guys have any questions, there's my number and email, and the new guidelines, as I said, they'll be released in the coming weeks. You guys are just the lucky few to be able to see some of the snippets that we added. They'll be available at that URL. Do you guys have any questions about manure or anything in general?
Curtis,
Yep.
with the increased capacity demands for liquid manure storage, has the funding changed at all?
So the funding for liquid manure storage is currently 50% up to 40,000. We did increase it a little bit. I know a liquid manure storage can run anywhere between 200 and 400,000, but it certainly does help the producer in the end. I review a lot of the permits that come through the Department of, the permitting office, and we're seeing the storage is already being built to this size, so that we're seeing a very minimal impact on producers. Any other questions? No? I guess that's it for me. Thanks, guys.